Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Lam. Welcome to the Dr. Lam Show. Today I have Rich Taylor here with me as we are going to talk about how to live stress-free and how to really enjoy life living free from stress. A lot of us work in fast-paced um, businesses, and Rich himself has worked in advertising for over 40 years and discovered that, stress was his motivation and getting into deadlines, but they definitely had some negative side effects. And he has discovered how to live life stress-free and starts a movement to help people also live their life stress-free. And so he does have a podcast called The Stress-Free Diet. And but we're so happy to welcome you here on the Dr. Lam Show, Rich.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to be with somebody like-minded as you.
Thank you. So why don't you just tell us, how you came to doing, how your stress was and how you came to living your life stress-free.
Well, I remember when I went to art school a long time ago, we had an executive from an ad agency came in because basically graphic designers do a lot of advertising. And he said, I need you guys to do this project. Anyone want to do it? And I didn't raise my hand, but a few of the brighter students did. And then they said, well, when do you need it? And he said, I need it yesterday. And yesterday that's always been advertising. Advertising, it's always been high paced. It's accepted. But that's crept into mainstream lifestyles, not just jobs. If you're whatever you do, whatever your lifestyle is, everything's yesterday. And it's yesterday at home with your kids. It's yesterday with every part of our lives. So you get in your car, everyone's driving like that. They're all stressed out, and people tend to think that that's just normal because everyone's doing it. We know the effects of that are horrible, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I did it wrong for a long time. I perceive myself as an expert from all the failures I made, not because I'm a doctor like you or a scientist. This is like the school of hard knocks learning I went through, and I use motivation, stress as motivation, and it's great to get you pumped up. But as we know, when you're in a stress response, it's horrible for your body, and it takes your brain out of the rational part of the brain to the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala, which makes you just basically a robot on steroids, and you'll get it done, but you won't do your best work.
Right. And so I know you tend to say that over 80% of all visits to doctors are stress related, right? That's why a lot of people come to me.
Right.
And it does make sense to try to get rid of stress. But hey, Rich, how do we actually get rid of stress? This is life.
No, that's an excellent question. And I work in the self-help industry, and so many of my potential clients will always put in, you need to do this, and reduce your stress, but they never tell you how to do it. So I'm like, wait a minute, maybe we should tell people actually how to do it. So we came up with this thing called a stress switch. A stress switch is a person, place, or thing that causes you stress. And we have a lot of these stress switches turned on in our life. And the more you have turned on, the more stressed you're going to be. I'll give you a perfect example of a stress switch that is totally normal, totally accepted, and totally wrong. Is people watch the news. They watch and they don't just watch it. They binge watch it. They have it on their flat screen TVs 24 hours a day. And I'm old enough to remember back when there was 30 minutes of national news every night. That was it. And there's still only 30 minutes of national news, but they have to spread it out into 24 hours. So they do it with drama, clickbait, having one side hate the other side. So now you're emotionally engaged. So now you have people just not watching tragic things, which are not good to have in your home, go on. They're yelling at the TV, that guy is this or that person's that. And that's how they engage you all that time. They make money off of it, but it's horrendous for your stress. And we all know about secondhand smoke. If say parents are smoking in a home, how dangerous secondhand smoke is. But what about secondhand stress? These kids are growing up in homes with secondhand stress, and they're going to be just like their parents. And they're going to think it's normal to yell at a television. So that's just one stress switch. There's lots of them that we have. We have over 100 of them. I'll give you a couple more really quick ones. Another one is disconnect from work. A lot of with our phones, we can stay connected 24/7. And trust me, Very few jobs will say, you know what, Rich, you've put enough hours in. Take the night off. No, they're going to like, what's next? What can you do for me next? So it's up to us to set those boundaries. So we say at least 12 hours a day, you should be disconnected from work. It should be more than that, but start there. So that 12-hour period is your rest, digest, and restore part. That's the part
Mm.
where you no email from work, no text messages, no phone calls, no work. That's your time to rest and repair, because you'll just be a better employee because of it. I mean, you can't burn the candle both ends. So here's the third one, which is really controversial, but we stand by it. And I've proved it myself, is watching sports. Mostly men watch sports. And what do they do they work all week, stress, come home on Saturday. They have Saturday off. That's the honeydew day. They do all the honeydew stuff, do the yard, soccer for the kids, go shopping. Okay, great. Sunday comes around and it's all Sunday afternoon. The day before you go back to the stress and the work, you're sitting in front of a television, eating and drinking very unhealthy foods, yelling at a television on the edge of your seat, totally stressed out. You're in a stress response for 3 to 6 or 8 hours. So very controversial. I don't watch sports. I don't watch them anymore. And I'll give you a proof to that point. Last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, won the Super Bowl. I did not watch one Buccaneer game live. What I did do was the games they won, I went on YouTube, and YouTube has the 14, 15-minute recap of the highlights. So I don't spend 3 hours sweating bullets in front of my TV eating pizza. Okay. I know they won, and I enjoy watching it 15 minutes and I'm done. It's great. So my life is stress-free on Sunday. Sunday afternoons, I used to be always nervous about, are they going to win? Are they going to lose? That's gone. I have
Yeah.
friends that if their team loses, they put the jersey on and everything. If their team loses, they're bummed out all week. They don't pay me. They don't pay you to be bummed out. If they did, it still wouldn't be worth it. Controversial, yes, but does it work? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's some good ways of really dealing with stress practically, right?
Right.
And just to kind of take a few steps back on how stress really affects people, can you give us some examples of that, like whether it's physically or mentally or socially? What does,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, let's talk about what stress is. And you know, because you're a doctor, stress, it's really not stress, it's a stress response. Our body has this automatic response kicked in. Just like if I were to like go up to somebody and pretend to punch them in the face, they would react by jumping back. They're not going to think like, okay, here comes a fist very quickly. I need to jump back. No, it's an automatic response from our autonomic nervous system. It's a sympathetic response. And that is there to protect our lives. So if you're like coming around the corner and there's a big angry bear there, automatically it's going to kick in and have you fight, flight, or freeze. And we're only supposed to have that activated for no more than 30 to 60 seconds, because during that time, either you got away or you became lunch, or the person or the creature that was attacking you became lunch, or they got away. So basically, we're not supposed to be in a stress response more than 60 seconds at a time. Most people are in it 24 hours a day in, day out. So that's the stress response. Now, what does it do to our body? Well, it does wonderful things if you're trying to run away from that bear. It gives you extra energy, it gives you the adrenaline, it puts cortisol in your body to redistribute the glucose so that you have the energy in the right place. It does amazing things for that 30 to 60 seconds. But our bodies can't tell the difference between running away from a bear or a saber-toothed tiger or the boss yelling at us, or we having a deadline. Our body can't figure it out. So it's just not, so if you're in a stress response every day, day after day, it's horrendous for your body. I mean, you have high cortisol levels, and high cortisol levels lead to a host of issues. It suppresses our immune system tremendously. I remember when I graduated art school and I moved home to my parents' home in Connecticut, and my dad had just taken this job as a manager of a major insurance company office. And my dad's a type A guy. He doesn't do anything half-ass. Everything he does is 150%. And he was in his early 50s. And I remember him coming home every day saying, I'm doing a job of a much younger man. It was very stressful. That agency he took over his like 400th ranked in the country. And within 2 years, he whipped it to like number 14, because that's just my dad. My dad
Hmm.
was World War II veteran. I mean, he was tough. He knew how to get things done, but he was under so much stress. He ended up having not one, but two serious cases of cancer, and he almost died. If it wasn't for him getting into Sloan Kettering and going through two massive surgeries, a whole year of chemotherapy, he would have never. And actually, thank God he lived to the ripe age of 94. We just lost him a couple of years ago. But
Amazing.
would have never happened probably if he wasn't under that stress.
Yeah, so I like how you talk about the stress response because that is definitely a term we use too. Specifically the neuroendometabolic stress response, in that, yes, stress affects you and your whole body, not only just the sympathetic nervous system, but really it can affect your gut, your inflammation, your immune system, like you said, your
Right,
hormones. And so it's great to look at it in a whole comprehensive way.
right.
And so, how would you say this stress switch that you're talking about? Can you kind of elaborate a little more on what people can do about it?
Well, first of all, you have to know that you have a problem. You have to know that the stress switch even exists. A lot of people think sitting in front of a TV on a Sunday and yelling at TV, being all stressed out is normal. So, or all the other stress switches we have, staying connected to work, they just think that that's normal. So we wrote a book called Stress Free You. It's on Amazon. And in there, we list 108 stress switches, very common ones, and their fixes. And so in there, you have to first understand, okay, what are my stress switches? It could be a toxic friend. A toxic friend could be a stress switch. Like every time I'm with this person, they're just always pulling on me, always wanting something. I always feel worse and look, we have to set up boundaries. So if that person makes you are toxic for your health and cause you stress, you get to set boundaries. So each person, I basically say, get a sheet of paper and write down everything that stresses you out, everything. And everyone is unique. Not one person is the same. Some people may be their job. Some people may love their job, but they hate their commute. Maybe they need to find a different way to commute. Maybe they hate their boss or their boss stresses them out. Maybe they need to speak up to their boss and set some boundaries. I had a job once where I was an assistant art director. My boss was the art director, and the publisher of this magazine, he would keep us there till like 1 o'clock in the morning because we were a startup, and that's what startups do. After 2 weeks of that, I said, Carol, I'm going to work like crazy between 9 and 5:30. At 5:30, I'm leaving. She said, you are? Yeah, I am. And the publisher, his office is typical entrepreneur, right by the door, and he could see everybody coming and going. And I did. I left, and I kept to that schedule. And I probably even still worked harder and more stressful than I needed to during that time, but that was my time. And I was on salary. They weren't paying me. And guess what? He brought his work in a lot faster than waiting till 1 o'clock. He had no life, so he didn't care. So we had to set up boundaries with friends, with relatives, parents, children, every part of our life. If you got an issue with eating, if you're eating because of stress, don't try to go on a diet, because 95% of all those diets are going to fail. Everyone listening to this podcast has tried probably 3 or 4 diets, and most people have failed multiple times. So why do people fail? They're not unintelligent. They could read a diet book, they can look at it. But here's the thing, Dr. Lamb, when you're in a stress response, your body, as you know, burning through glucose, and that's our primary source of fuel. And when we're in a stress response, the brain already uses half of it. It uses another 12% more, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So it's like putting your foot on your accelerator of your car when the car's in neutral. You're burning through gas like crazy. You're not going anywhere, but you're burning through gas. So when we have a stressful event, why do we crave cookies, ice cream, candies, all these refined carbohydrates, or fast food with all the stuff that they put in it? We're not bad people. It's because we burn through all this glucose and our body's saying, give us glucose. I mean, how many people go home and get some raw broccoli and some hummus without oil and eat that? It's just not going to happen.
It's
You
true.
know, it's just not going to. I mean, maybe you should, but it's not going to.
No
It's not going to.
celery cravings,
Yeah,
right?
no. You're not. Let me have some nice vegetable juice. So what I'm saying is, don't go on a diet. Get rid of your stress first. then you have a much, much, much better chance of succeeding on a diet.
Hmm.
It's
That
always,
makes a lot of sense.
it's so backwards. And so at first of the year is coming up in a couple of months, all these people are going to go on these diets. They're going to buy this exercise stuff, which will be a dinosaur in their bedroom. They'll be hanging clothes on their treadmill, and within a month, they'll sign up for a gym membership, and they won't cancel the gym membership because they'll feel guilty of canceling it. So even worse, A, they're not going, and B, they're paying. So, which causes more stress because now they're not paying for something they're not getting. Don't
That's
don't
true.
start any exercise program. Don't start a diet until you get rid of your stress or vastly reduce it. Now, there's stress relief and there's stress prevention. And you could do all the stress relief in the world, the deep breathing, the yoga, even exercise, walking, all great stuff. But for most people in the Western civilized world, if you want to call it that way, and I use the word civilized with air quotes because are we really civilized with what we're doing to ourselves? I think people
Hmm.
in primitive areas are a lot smarter. I mean, you look at the blue zones around the world, like Okinawa and Sardinia, where these people live happy, relaxed lives and live to well over 100.
Yeah.
It's because there's no stress.
Or they are able to, yeah, set the boundaries, and love their life. So, I like the practical tips. Even if you love something, that doesn't mean that it's not stressful, right? Just like the example that you gave about sports. Some people love to watch it, or they think that they love to watch it, but they don't actually know that it's really stressing them out.
Right.
Any other practical tips that people can use to find out what their stressors are? Because some of these things you don't really think about.
I would have to say it's a unique thing for everybody. Um, I would
How does
say
someone
that
go about it, I guess?
I would just say, well, we wrote a book, but I mean, if you don't want to get the book, just very simply get a sheet of paper and write down everything. And you may want to have your spouse or your partner or a friend fill it in because I have a friend of mine that's very stressed out. I mean, he's super stressed out. And I said to him, Mike, you're really stressed out. He goes, I'm not stressed out. I mean, I can tell he really is just because I used to be all the time. So I would say write them down and then have someone else add to it because they're witnessing you and everybody's different. It could
Hmm.
be some people have a lot of emotional problems that they've never dealt with, and that adds, now the stress adds as the trigger to those emotional problems. So they go to counseling, think they're going to solve the emotional problems, but as long as they're stressed, it's like if someone's got a cut or a bruise and every time they rub it, it gets rubbed raw. Well, it's not going to fix the problem. You have to heal from that emotional issue, but as long as you're stressed, it's not gonna help, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. So how would you talk to someone who has relationship stress and they don't know how to get out of it, whether or that relationship itself is very stressful or their environment is.
I would say that unfortunately, when people are in a state of chronic stress and you get all the anxiety that comes with it, and that's a lot of personality issues just because people are anxious, but there's a growing trend in this country of narcissism. And it's not because they're bad people, but when somebody is in a stress response, they're in survival mode. I give the example, if you got a bunch of highly educated professional people in a theater watching the opera, and all of a sudden they smell smoke and someone yells fire, those people are going to have one thing in their mind. I don't care if you're wearing a tuxedo or jewels, get out that door. And we know it's sad, but people trample people just to get out because our will to survive is so well inbred in our life. If you jump in water, it's not before a few seconds underwater, you're going to want to go up and get air. I mean, so our will to survive. But what happens is if you're constantly in the will to survive, then it actually turns you into someone who's self-centered, somewhat hedonistic because they're always looking for the pleasure to relieve their go-to when they're stressed. But on a continual basis, it brings them into being a narcissist. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm not, but basically narcissists are looking out only for themselves. They'll lie just to get what they need to do because it's like anything. If you said to someone, if your life depended on it, would you lie? They might say yes, because the stakes are so high. But someone has a chronic stress response all the time, becomes narcissistic, they're going to do whatever. And that is horrible for relationships. I remember, because I'm old enough, I could go talk to someone and they ask me advice. I give them the advice. They go, Rich, Not always, but they'd say, that's something to think about. I think that makes sense. Now, when someone asks me for advice, I give them the advice, they totally ignore it, or they'll do the opposite thing. So parents are now raising kids that are like this, and parents are the same way. So you have families where, it used to be when I grew up, my dad would say, if you do this, if you speed, you can get a ticket, you get in an accident, these bad things happen. So now my generation would teach their kids with fear as the response. So if you do something, a bad thing happens. And that works in the rational realm. But if people in an emotional realm, in a stress response, so now these kids are all stressed out because their parents are stressed out because it was the first generation really where they saw both parents working all the time. And, family life changed dramatically. So now they're rebelling against what their parents did. So that's why 30 years old is the new 21 for a lot of millennials. It really is. And I don't know how many millennials I've run into, and I've got kids that are in their 30s. It's their treasure, millennials' treasure is treasure. No, I take that back. My generation's treasure is treasure, like money, finances. Millennials' treasure is pleasure. They want to work so they can have the money to have fun. My generation worked to have the money so we could someday have fun.
It's so true. I
Yeah.
get it.
It's like someone once said, Americans have this can-do attitude. Get all you can so you can all you get so that someday you can sit on your can.
Yeah. And then when you have that type of attitude, the stress never stops, right? Because you're always like aiming for something that you will never get, kind of, because you're
Yeah.
never satisfied.
It's like, you're right. Absolutely. That is Nelson Rockefeller, the famous wealthy person. They once asked him how much was enough money. He said, always another dollar. Yeah, money will never bring happiness. And we think chasing that dollar, and I did it for years. I mean, I've worked in this business for a long time, and I have sacrificed time with my family just to make a client happy. And that's okay for certain times. But I didn't have boundaries. I did not have healthy boundaries. And you only have a certain time with your kids. When your kids are young, I actually, looking back, I'm in my mid 60s now. I would say the two most important things in life is to have people around you that you love that love you. Okay. And have a good, healthy body and mind. All the other things, I would say the money, the prestige, the big house, I would say relatively low on the totem pole of priorities, because you could take somebody that has very little, but if the people around them love them and they love those people and have no stress in their life and they have their health, they've got 99% of what life's about.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And we all need to hear it, people who are successful, people who are not successful, people who are tired and sick and stressed or not stressed. We always need um, that reminder to keep your loved ones close by and to not let the world get to you, right?
Right.
Even me as a young doctor opening my own practice, it definitely is hard to get those boundaries and to choose to spend time with my baby and you could somewhat have that guilt, so like I should be working, but I should also be spending time with my newborn, so it definitely is a balance. So how would you uh, other than like, hey, putting in the boundaries and saying I'm not going to work after 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m., any other practical tips for working people?
Well, I think now that I've worked out of my home for the last 20 years, so I understand the whole virtual thing really well. A lot of people with COVID have, been transitioned to that and didn't know. So I know what it's like to work remotely, and I treat every day. I get up, I get ready, take a shower, put on clean clothes. I don't work in my pajamas, so I always approach it like professional, almost like if a client were to come over. But I think, like I said, I literally would go through a period um, where I would work from 7 in the morning till I literally couldn't see anymore on the computer screen. Okay. And I would do that 6 days a week. And then on Sunday, we go to church and then we do the family stuff. And I'd be back out on Monday. And yeah, I did that for like 9 months because I had a lot of work. I was a graphic designer, made a lot of money, but I had all these physical ailments. I had knots in my back. I had neck problems, eye problems, headaches. And that was the time my kids were young. I can't get that back. And this is what I will say. When your kids are young and in those impressionable areas, I'm saying this from someone who did it the wrong way. That is the most important time of their life. When they're older and they're more independent, that's a different story. My wife is an RN, and so she used to work nights and weekends. So it was always one of us home. I'd be Mr. Mom when she was working. But even then, even though there was always one of us, it wasn't great family life. It really wasn't. Looking back, I would have been more brutal as far as like just saying, look, you're not going to work for 3 years or 5 years or whatever, and or I'll take it off or something like that. I mean, whatever. I'm not always putting it on the women. Although women are very nurturing. It all depends. Each situation, and some parents can do it really well. Some parents are really cool and can handle that. They can juggle it, and I think because they have a really solid relationship and they know who they are. And I think that can work. But if you got people who have a lot of baggage from when they were young, from their families, and already have a lot of weak links, and you bring stress into it, it's going to exacerbate a thing. And you may think you're making an extra $2,000 or $3,000 now, but when they're older, that could be $20,000 to $200,000 fixing problems. I've experienced that in real life. I literally have written some checks recently for thousands of dollars fixing problems that could have been fixed for 5 minutes of time,
That
quality
is
time.
that is wisdom.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm being honest, totally candid, being honest with you about that. Yeah.
No, thank you. I think we definitely need to hear it, you know. So,
Yeah.
um, it's been great talking to you about living, how to enjoy life living free from stress. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners and watchers to know?
Just know that, like we say, you were born to live a life of love, joy, peace, and a sound mind. That's how we were designed. So if you're stressed out, you're not lining up with the way you were designed. And we were not designed to be in a stress response 99.9%. We're in rest, digest, and restore. The parasympathetic. That's how we were designed to be in. So if you're not in that, you need to evaluate your life. And it's like, no, can you live stressed out and live to 100? Yeah, but it's not likely going to make you do that.
And you wouldn't be
And
happy.
you'll never be a stressed out person is never happy because they're always going to be going to the next thing to make them their go-to. It's like the saying goes, as the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. There's always a go-to. There's always be some sort of pleasure. Let's go on this Uber vacation that costs $10,000. Let's do it. You're going to do it. You'll enjoy it, but you're coming back to stress. So it's just a temporary Band-Aid approach. So Dr. Lam, I give you all the credit for looking at the whole person from the whole approach, not just here's some pills and see you later type thing. We need many, many more of you. And what you guys are doing is phenomenal. So kudos to you.
You too, Rich. Thank you. So where can people find you?
Stressfreediet.com. And
All
we also
right.
have 2 books on Amazon. One's called Stress Free You, and one's called Stress Free Work.
All right. That's great. Thank you so much. As we talked about how to enjoy life living free from stress with some practical tips from Rich Taylor. We hope that you liked it. So make sure you subscribe and like our video and our channel. And we will see you next week on the Dr. Lam Show.